you guys to think about, and because we're seeing so many things changing, particularly on the East Coast. You know, temporary shelter is taking on a pretty broad definition at this point. Temporary shelter can be breakout space at a hospital. So you're seeing a lot of that going on. So I guess when we talk about the prompt, Logan, I think I want to sort of make it a little bit broader, that it could be more than just a single person shelter. It could be a family who has to quarantine. It could be hospital staff that needs to gain more space because they're simply running out of room. It could be hospital staff breakout space because, so we'll talk about that in more detail, but I want to be broader because things are evolving in real time.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. A good amendment. It's just temporary housing in general. So before getting into the program, I want to talk about the difference, kind of conceptual difference between vector file and raster file. Now, what is a vector file? What is a raster file? So Vector, the program that we learned on Tuesday, produces what are called vector files. The program that we're learning today, Pixlr, produces what are called raster files. And you know, both of them are very strong programs, but they're fundamentally different. A vector file defines objects and shapes and colors with mathematics, basically, with vectors. If anyone's taking calculus, they know the definition of a vector is magnitude and direction. And with a series of vectors and series of mathematics, you define images and shapes, etc. Raster file approaches it from a different direction, which is basically a bunch of pixels. So instead of having, you know, points and curves and lines and shapes, you just have an array of thousands of pixels. So that's the kind of difference. And I'm a visual learner, so I like to learn with images. Let's see here, I got a good. So if you just type in on Google vector file versus raster file, you get this great example. So on the left here, vector file is defined by points in mathematics, and raster file is defined by an array of pixels. Here's another good example. If I were to write the letter A in a vector file, it would look kind of something like this: points, curves, etc. If I were to write the letter A in a raster file, it would look like this, kind of pixelated like that. You might say, like, well, why would I do a raster file if it's pixelated? Why not just do a vector file? It's always sharper and better. The difference is because a raster file is way easier to edit. If you remember on vector, you know, we had to pretty cumbersome to like cut things or mask things or edit things. A raster file is much easier. It's like painting with a paintbrush because you just have an array of pixels. So that's kind of the basic difference between vector files and raster files. And remember, vector, the program that we learned, Vector, is a vector file producer, hence the name Vector. And the raster file program that we're learning is a pixel-based file maker, hence the name Pixlr. So Vector and Pixlr are pretty good names. Do anyone have any questions on the difference between those two files? Because it's a big concept. So. All right. Well, if you guys got cool.
Wait, have we done anything on Vector yet?
Yeah, we did stuff on Vector last class period. Remember this on Tuesday? Remember?
Oh, I had to leave early, so I don't.
Oh, no worries. But Chantel shared the video of our entire, or maybe she has, or maybe she will. But we recorded the entire session on Vector. And so you can go back and watch that video if you want to learn vector. Somewhere here, yeah. This was the file that we were playing with. Let's see, and this was the image that we made at the end of the day, or something like that. Not quite that, but so remember, this was vector, and you can go back and learn about it. And the program we're learning today is Pixlr, which is a raster file.
All right.
Any other questions on those two?
Nope.
Cool. Well, if you do have questions, just shout them out. No reason not to interrupt. So we're going to do two things today. I'm going to move a little bit faster because I thought you guys were a little bored last time, so I'm going to kick it up a notch and move a little bit faster. We're going to do two things. We're going to learn how to make a site plan, and for the site plan, we're going to use a combination of the program we learned on Tuesday, Vector. Then we're going to bring that image into Pixlr and make a site plan with it. And then and I'll talk about what a site plan is in a second. And then the next thing we're going to do is what I call collage render. And a collage render is basically just envisioning a space and making an image of a design or a space using collage techniques from the internet. So all of what we're going to do today is something that you can easily do at home and requires no special tools or anything like that. So first of all, let's talk about a site plan. We'll go back to the internet here. All this is on the internet. So a site plan, I think in the architecture class know that a site plan is basically an overhead view of a project. If you just type in site plan on Google or rendering on Google, you can find all sorts of examples. I don't want to go into if these examples are good or not. I just want to look at them as kind of a generic way to describe a site plan. It's kind of the main organizing principle of an architectural or urban project. It's one of the main drawings that architects and urban planners and other designers produce. So there's a billion out there, right? There's billions of these plans, and you can look at them all day long. But some things to keep in mind, it's an overhead view, right? You see things around it, like I see some streets, I see some sidewalks, I see trees, I see roofs of buildings, right? Roofs. So, that's a site plan, and we're going to try and make one of those. And, a great example of a site plan is a map, right? A map is a type of site plan. And, if you Google Maps, you can get a photos. This is a type of site plan too. So there's lots of different kinds of site plans out there. And I want to keep going on making a site plan. So
Logan, before you go forward, so for those of you who this is a kind of a new idea and a new concept as designers, the reason that architects and urban planners do a site plan is because they want to understand where their project sits inside of a larger place, right? It's about understanding relationships. So if you look at the images that Logan's been popping up, there are important things going on for designers. Oh, there's water. Oh, there's a big park over here and it's an amphitheater. So site plans are about sort of the big picture and how your project is what the relationship is between your project as the architect and everything else around it.
Yeah.
So that's why we do it.
Yeah. Context is a huge, how your project sits within its surrounding context. And I think thanks Trish, it's like that's the purpose. And I think we'll talk more about that next week as we ask you all to kind of understand how your project might sit within its context. So just to jump in, it pulls up because I live close to Lake Merritt in Oakland. So, just thinking about our prompts for a second, temporary housing, I would like to just make this site plan. I have kind of a basic rough idea in my head of what I would want my site plan to be like. But, we're not going to talk too much about the merit of my idea, of my design, right? We're not going to get too much into that because I just want to show you the tool, right? And how you would create one. So with that said, let's get started. By my house in Lake Merritt, there's this brown lot that you're seeing on the screen right now. And unfortunately, this lot has already temporary housing on it by folks that don't have a home. So I thought that this was a good place to study today and draw a site plan over, a possible intervention of what temporary housing at this site may look like. So Remember, I'm just on Google Maps, so you can go to Google Maps and click the little map satellite button in the lower left-hand corner and change between map and satellite. So this is totally something you could do. And I'm going to start with this image right here. So the first thing I'm going to do is a little Google Maps trick. If you go to the left in Google Maps, you can turn off labels because I don't want it to tell me that there's like a gym and a, you know, like burrito place next door. So I'm just going to turn all these labels off for a second. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take an image of what I see here. And it's a little bit different on a Mac or a Windows computer. On a Mac, you press Shift Command 4, I believe, to get a screenshot. If you have a Mac, Shift Command 4. You can ask me that if you forget. But on a Windows, it's easy. I use this little tool, the snipping tool. And I use the snipping tool all the time. I'm just going to snip this piece out here. This is what I want. So boom. So now I have this image. I'm going to save this image. I'll just save it to my desktop. I'm going to call it Oakland 1. Okay, so now I have an image, right? Now I have an image, a background for my site plan. Now I'm going to go to vector. I'm just going to use the same file that we were using the other day. I'll add a page here. And the first thing I'm going to do, like we learned on Tuesday, I'm going to upload an image, that image that I just took from Google Maps. Here it is, Oakland 1. It's on my desktop. And like I said, I'm going to go a little bit faster so you guys don't get too bored. But if I'm going too fast, just let me know. So here's that image. And I'm going to kind of make it a little bit bigger by holding down Shift and making it bigger. Right? I don't want to do that. I'm going to hold down Shift, make it bigger. A little bit bigger. And I'm just going to use this. I'm going to do some really basic stuff on this. All I want is a couple lines. If you notice on some of these plan renderings, you kind of start with lines. The first thing you draw are some lines, the outline of your project, right? So that's what, oops, pull that back up. So the first thing I'm going to do is start with some of those lines. So I'm going to grab my pen tool. You guys remember the pen tool? I'm just going to draw. I'm not going to go too crazy because I don't want to waste all your time, but I'm just going to start tracing, important concept. I'm just going to start tracing the street a little bit. I'm going to make that one. And remember, maybe this photo, I kind of want to dial this photo back so I don't quite see it too much. So I'm going to decrease the opacity of the photo a little bit. I'm getting a little buggy on me. I'm going to decrease the opacity of the photo a little bit. And see, so I'm just using my pen tool and I'm just drawing some lines. A little buggy. I'm not going to draw too many lines, but I think, you know, if, you know, you were making a bigger site plan, you would want to draw more lines. You would want to draw the streets, you would want to draw sidewalks, you would want to draw the buildings, you would want to draw the parks, you would want to draw really as much as you can. And I find this personally, I find it like a really fun exercise of just drawing the site. And it can be really, you can actually discover a lot just drawing the site, like figuring out what's there. And, you know, like for instance, here I'm just noticing that like there's this cool park to the right over to the left over there. That's kind of cool. All right, I'm getting a little slower than it was the other day. I'll just kind of keep moving here. Maybe I'll use the pencil tool so I have a little bit more free hand. Maybe that's working a little bit better. Remember, the pencil tool is a little bit more free handy. So that's kind of that weird kind of fish shape that I just drew. That's kind of our site boundary. That's kind of where maybe my project will be. And I'm gonna, maybe I'll draw this little pathway here. You know, like I said, I'm doing this really fast. I think if you really want to draw a plan, you would want to be a bit more conscious about what you're drawing. So let's see, maybe I'll make a few more lines. Get some sidewalk action going on. There's like a little park there. So that's, maybe I'll draw a couple more lines. And remember, another thing people like to do on site plans is like mess with the line weight, right? Like mess with the thickness of the line. Like, for instance, the street line is really important, right? Because that's kind of, streets are important. They kind of, the main definition of an urban environment is a street. So maybe I'll take the street line and I'll pump it up a little bit. Pump up the thickness of that line a little bit, just to like define the street a little bit. So there. So, I think maybe I'll just add a couple more things. Maybe these couple of buildings that are by my site, like that seems pretty important. I'm gonna add those buildings. That's pretty important. And remember, I just drew these closed shapes, so maybe I'll take these closed shapes, I'll shift select them, so I select them both at the same time, and maybe I'll give them a background color, remember? And maybe I'll make their backgrounds kind of a gray. So you see that a lot in site plans, buildings with kind of a gray tone. So maybe that's probably good enough for now. I'm kind of happy with my site plan. It's a little janky, right? I would probably want to spend more time on this in general, right? But I think for our purposes, it's probably enough. Because I just kind of want to show you guys the basics of these programs. Maybe the last thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to draw my design a little bit. And because we're doing temporary housing, I was thinking maybe just a series. I was thinking about a shipping container project. I know that's kind of obvious, but it's kind of a simple. It's a good way to learn a program. Let's put it that way. So I'm actually going to zoom in a little bit. Lower right hand corner, zoom in. And I'll just take my shipping container, I'll just do a little rectangle. Maybe I'll just Control-C, Control-V these shipping containers and just kind of push them different places. So these are my this is my design, little shipping container community or something like that. So remember, we're not going into the merits of the design. I don't know if it's the best design, but it's an idea that we can talk about the program with. Maybe I got a couple there. Maybe I'll do a couple over here. Maybe at the corner, I'll kind of bump it up because the corner is where the action's at. Maybe I'll put another couple of shipping containers. Whoopsies, I want to move the image behind. In fact, I'm going to right-click the image and lock that object. Grab my shipping container, put it here. A couple more shipping containers. And then maybe, I don't know, it'd be nice to have a little outdoor space. So maybe I'll pretend that's an outdoor space. And maybe over here, maybe there's some other kind of space on my little community. Maybe, I don't know, maybe it's like a little amphitheater or something. Either way, here's my site plan. I'm going to zoom back out a little bit. It's pretty basic, but there's an idea there, right? There's an idea there. Maybe not a good idea, but one idea. So next up, now that I'm happy with that, I'm going to hit the export button. And this time, instead of using the link that we did before, I'm going to hit the download button. Download. And that should, see it just downloaded there. Actually, I'm gonna use a JPEG. I'm not sure what an SVG is. I'm going to use a JPEG. That's a better kind of image file. So I'm going to hit that download button again. And I think that just went into my downloads. So now I got my site plan. Any questions before we move on to Pixlr? Okay, cool. Yeah, you guys are pros at vector now. So Pixlr, really easy. You just go to Google and type in Pixlr. So I'll actually do that. There's two programs. If I just type in Pixlr, I can go to Pixlr here. two programs. They got an advanced one, and they got what they call a playful one. Pixlr X, the playful one, is good if you're just doing like random photo editing. It's kind of similar to Instagram, to be honest, with a little bit more capabilities. And the one that we're going to do today is the advanced one, Pixlr E for editor. So I'm going to click into that. And here's kind of the splash page. I don't have to give them my email or anything like that. The first, so, you know, this, you'll have files that you worked on previously. These are a couple files that I was playing on before we met today. A couple other things, not sure what those are, it doesn't really matter. The first two options you have are either open an image, which is what I'm going to do, or you can load an image from the internet. So I'm going to open an image, and it pops up my Explorer here. And let's see, I'm going to go to my downloads, and there it is. Named it Logan for me. I'm going to open that image. So here it is. I made this image in Vector, right? Totally different program. Made this image in Vector, saved it as an image, and brought it into a different program. So that's kind of that's a concept to remember, is making an image in one program, bringing it into another program. So before we start kind of making this site plan, I'm going to do the same thing that I did on Tuesday, which is just go through the tools. And this time I'm going to go through them a little bit faster, because I don't want you guys to get too bored. And before I do that, I just want to say that this is a pretty complex program. It's actually extremely similar to Photoshop. So those of you who have done Photoshop before, a couple of architecture students have, and maybe other people have, it's almost identical to Photoshop, except that it's totally free and 100% online. So there's a lot of functionality, and what we're going to be doing today is just a piece of that functionality, just a small piece. So the first thing, you know, you got some file like open, save, etc. You got edit, which we'll kind of get into a little bit more. We'll get into edit a little bit more. We got image. You can adjust the image size or the canvas size. Those are kind of different, but you probably don't care too much about that right now. It's basically like cropping your photo. Like if you got Instagram, you got crop your photos, similar to that. You got layers. So similar to vector, you know, an important concept is layers. And you got some options here, and we'll get into layers a little bit more. And you see the layers actually, on Vector, the layers are on the left-hand side. In this program, the layers are over here on the right-hand side. I only got one layer right now, the image that I brought in, that they automatically call background. I got some selection options. Talk about that in a bit. Got some adjustment options. These are almost identical to Instagram. You know, I can adjust the brightness, I can adjust the contrast, and other things that Instagram can do. I got filter. Again, this is very similar to Instagram. Instagram's got a bunch of different filters. These have a little bit more capabilities, so you can play around with them, but it's very similar to Instagram. And I got view, which is basically zoom in, zoom out, etc. And I got help, of course. You know, you can, you know, they got tutorials and all sorts of stuff, so you can get in there. So on the left-hand side, same as vector, I have tools. The first tool is simply, they call it the arrange tool, which it's basically just my cursor. It's like, if I want to go back to square one, I'm using this tool. Second tool I have, they call the Marquee Select. And that's basically just a way to, that's a selection. So for instance, if I click my Marquee tool and I kind of drag a box, I'm selecting pixels. And I can move this kind of pixel box around. Again, I'm just selecting pixels, and you can see the WH, the width height. That's how many pixels I'm selecting. So it's like telling me how many pixels I'm selecting. Like for instance, if I select this box of pixels here, maybe I move it over here. And let's just say I hit delete. So by hitting delete, hey there, who's that?
I'm Natalie.
What's up, Natalie? So we're
I can't. Oh, sorry, I can't do the programming right now because I don't have anything I can do it on. But
no
I can.
Problem. No problem. Yeah, you can watch, and we're recording, so you can return to it at any time.
Okay.
So I'm going to hit Control Z. If you remember, Control Z is back, and I'm just going to do that again. If I just select, I'm selecting pixels. If I hit delete, I can delete those pixels. I can move this box, I can hit delete, and I can delete pixels to my heart's desire. So that's what the selection thing does. It selects pixels. And that'll become really important in the future. Next tool is called the Lasso Tool, and it's basically a different way of selecting. I can select any kind of shape I want. For instance, this shape, and I can delete those pixels. And I can select some other weird shape, delete those pixels. So the Lasso Tool is the same as the Marquee Tool, it's just a different way of selecting. Pixels.
Wait, Russell, can I actually use it?
The next tool is a third way of selecting pixels. So the magic wand, this is called the magic wand tool, or the wand select. So the magic wand, if I just click, you'll notice it selects a kind of random assortment of pixels. And it's basically selecting, it's trying to guess what pixels I want to select. And it selects them basically based on color. So for instance, if I hover right over the black and I click on top of that, I'll select just the black pixels. You see that? And if I zoom in is just scroll, which is nice. So again, I can just like select just the black pixels. And again, if I delete them, I can like delete those pixels. Or I can select the lake over here and it like selects a bunch and I can delete all those that I just selected. I don't want to do that. And I can adjust the tolerance. So this tolerance of this slide, I'm going to spend a little bit of time on this tool because I think it's the most important tool. The tolerance is basically how much it tolerates. If I have a really high tolerance, it's basically going to friggin' select everything because it's got a really high tolerance. If I have a really low tolerance, I usually hang out pretty low. For instance, a tolerance of 4, if I decrease that tolerance to about 4, it's going to very narrowly select, see how it selects very small pieces as opposed to big, huge pieces. And if I delete that, like if I want to delete the water, for instance, I just select those pixels. So the tolerance, magic wand and tolerance is incredibly important way to select things. And that's what Photoshop is all about. It's all about selecting pixels and editing those pixels. Another thing that I can do, there's some other options here, but the other important one is this contiguous.
Hey, Logan, can I ask you a question real quick?
Yeah.
It's Chris. Did you did you actually delete any of those when you said I could delete these?
Yeah, like for instance, I'll do that again. I'll select these pixels. If I click and I hold shift and I select more, similar to vector, I select more, and I just hit the delete button. I delete those pixels and it just shows the background. And the background is this kind of chip.
I see. So when you were doing those squares, you weren't actually deleting them. Otherwise, they would show up as rectangles or squares that were black.
Exactly.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, like if I do my Marquee tool again over here, the kind of rectangle selection, and I delete it, then it would.
And it's black. So it's going to do it on this screen. That's what I mean.
Yeah.
Image. Okay, thanks.
Let's see, Control Z to go back. So that's what the magic wand is. And the other part that I wanted to mention was contiguous. Contiguous means touching. So if I have this little contiguous button turned on up here at the top, that means it's only going to select pixels that are touching. I'm going to turn my tolerance back down. It's only going to select pixels that are touching each other. For instance, this, right? So I select those, I magic wand this little area, and it only selects pixels that are touching. If I turn contiguous off, this little button, then it selects all pixels that are similar to that pixel that I selected that are not touching. So you guys see the difference there, contiguous versus not contiguous? So that is honestly, those three tools are honestly the most important part of Photoshop, is how to select pixels. Does anyone have any questions? Those are the most important parts. The only thing I will add is how to deselect. So once you selected something, maybe I select like a bunch of stuff here. To deselect is Control D. Control D. I don't think there's a button. You have to remember Control D to deselect. Or maybe I can hit right click. No. You gotta hit Control D to deselect. So I'm gonna keep moving down. I'm gonna keep moving down on these tools, but selection tools by far the most important. Crop tool, very similar to Instagram. It pops up this little box and I can kind of crop the view to what I want. In fact, I'm actually gonna crop this image a little bit. So that's my crop tool. I'm just gonna hit, maybe I'll get a little bit of the water here. I'm just gonna hit enter. Whoopsies. Crop tool. I'm gonna crop it to where I want. And I'll hit this little button up top that says apply. You know, you'll notice there's some other things that you can hang out on the top row. There's a lot of different things going on, but you know, we don't have to get into that. It's a big program you can learn on your own time. The cut tool, the cut tool is very similar to selecting and deleting, and that's all I say. So you don't have to learn much about that. Some of these tools I'm going to skip because I don't find them very useful. And the cut tool is one of them. Next tool is liquify. That is kind of a photo editing tool, and it's kind of meant to like if basically you want to like get rid of someone's pimple. If you like take a portrait shot, and you want to like get rid of their pimples, you like use the liquify tool. So we're not gonna use that tool very much. So I'll just skip it. Heal is very similar, and you know, it gives me a little description there. So heal removes spots, removes unwanted objects. So that could be helpful, but I don't think it's helpful for this tutorial. Clone tool is pretty cool. Clone tool, basically the clone tool, I'm able to select a body of pixels and then copy them to another area. And I actually use this a lot in Photoshop, but I haven't used it yet in this program. Basically, the way it works is the first thing you do is you hold down Alt and you kind of select the area that you want to copy. Oopsies. Or actually, it's kind of different here. I hold down this. Up here, there's kind of two options, a source and a paint. So if, for instance, if I hang out in source first, I'm going to select like this blue area at the top, this water here. I'm going to kind of hover over the source. I'm going to click and kind of hover over the source, and then I'm going to paint. It kind of automatically changes it for me. So I'm selecting the source. Now I like paint the source, and you see it kind of, you kind of just got to play with it. It's like using the own image using the own image as a source. And I think that's all I'll say about it. It's a complicated tool, and you kind of just have to play with it. You got to play around. The blur, the smudge tool, that's kind of self-explanatory. It just kind of blurs and smudges things. Again, it's kind of a photo editing thing, not really for design, but sometimes useful. Dodge and burn, that's another photo editing term. Basically, it means to lighten or to darken. And if I have it on the lighten setting, this light is making things lighter. Control Z, if I have it on the darker setting, it's going to make things darker. Kind of subtle. Next thing, what is this? Sponge color. That's photo editing. I'm just going to skip that. Pen is similar to vector. You know, it's just a pen. And yeah, that's kind of weird. Interesting. So yeah, you can play with that. But again, we're not going to do that. We're mostly hanging out in the photo collaging realm. Drawing, I think that, so drawing, this one is actually quite useful. It's just basically a paintbrush, and that's why that's why the icon is a paintbrush. And I can paint to my heart's desire. I can also choose the color down here in the bottom left. You see the color. I can choose maybe one of their default colors, and I can just paint to my heart's desire. Similarly, at the top, you have a couple options. You can make it bigger. You can make the size a lot bigger. You can make the soft, really sharp or really soft, right? Spikes, I'm not really sure what that is. Not really sure what these other ones are. I guess you can choose the shape of your brush, but there's a lot of functionality. You can also choose the opacity. Like if I turn the opacity way down, it's kind of transparent. So brush tools, super powerful, obviously. You can just add any color you want. So moving down the list, don't want to spend too much time covering these. The next is eraser. It's exactly what it sounds like. For instance, if I'm going to make a new layer here. Remember, we remembered layers from the last class. I'm going to make a new empty layer. So if I just draw a bunch of paint here and I select the eraser tool, I can erase that paint. Simple as that. Very simple. I'm going to delete this layer that I just made. We'll get no layers. We'll remind ourselves what layers are in a sec. Color replace, that sounds complicated. I don't think we need to talk about it. Fill is kind of like paintbrush, but it's basically like a paint bucket. Instead of painting with a brush, I'm painting with a bucket. And similar to the wand tool, it paints based on pixels that are similar. And it's got the tolerance thing going on as well here. So it's the same idea. So for instance, I got a really high tolerance. So when I hit with the paint bucket, it like paints all of them. So I'll hit Control Z and go back. But if I turn my tolerance way low, like I did with the wand tool, it may only paint certain pieces, right? Similarly, it's got the contiguous button, just like the wand tool. And if I turn contiguous off, it's painting pixels that aren't necessarily touching each other. So it's very much like the wand tool, except instead of selecting, I'm painting. Moving right on down, we got a gradient tool. I'm not even going to get into that because we talked about gradient on Tuesday. And, you know, like if you remember, a gradient is kind of like the sky, right, at sunset. And you can use the gradient tool. It's very similar to what we talked about on Tuesday. So I'm just going to not even talk about it right now. Next one is the shape tool. I don't even know what that is. I think that's just different shapes, like rectangles. At the top, I can choose a circle. I can draw a circle. You know, I can draw a triangle, etc. Very similar to the vector program. Control Z a couple times to go back. Finally, got a text tool. Very obvious. You just hit add text and you can type what you want. I'm just going to hit back again. Picker tool. So this is the last tool we're going to talk about. Picker tool allows me to select a certain color on the image, which can be really helpful. Like for instance, you know, when I have the picker tool, I hover over different colors and it allows me to select that exact color. That's pretty useful because sometimes you want, like for instance, if I want to make, see how there's a little concrete and a little asphalt in this road here? Let's say I want to make the concrete road the same color as the asphalt road. So maybe I would pick the asphalt color, just click where the asphalt is, and then maybe I would go back to my paint bucket here, the fill tool. I would turn contiguous back on, and maybe I would just kind of slowly start painting. That's really hard to see. Maybe I'll turn my tolerance up a little bit. So yeah, you see how it's, I selected that color, and now I'm like painting everything that color. I'm going to go back again. So the picker tool is really useful for picking particular colors. Zoom tool, that's pretty self-explanatory. You can use it to zoom in and out. And then finally, the little hand tool, that's my pan tool. So if I'm zoomed way in, I can pan to the right or left. And zoom back out. So those are the tools. And I know I just blazed through that. Does anyone have questions about the tools? Like, Logan, can I do this or can I do that? Or this doesn't make sense to me.
No.
All right, word. So before I start going a little bit, I'm going to just remind you all about layers. So this program also uses layers. Super important concept, right? It's like stacking, as Trish said last time, it's like stacking pieces of paper, pieces of trace paper on top of one another. Similarly, I have a couple options on my layers. I have locked and unlocked, and I have visible and not visible. So for instance, just to drive the concept home, I can hit the little plus button over here at the layers and add a new layer. And there's a few different types. I'm just going to add an empty layer. And if I maybe choose my paintbrush tool over here, my draw tool, and draw a bunch. Maybe I'll draw a different color, draw some of this color, right? And if I put this layer underneath the other layer, then it goes away, right? Because it's underneath. And similarly, this first layer, I can right click and I have some options. I can make it more or less transparent, right? I can lock it, I can make it, I can hide it, etc. I can delete it, I can duplicate it, I can name it. It has blend mode.
Hey, Logan?
Yeah, go ahead.
What does it mean if you lock it?
Yeah, so locking, it's super similar to the other program. So to demonstrate, I'll kind of bring my paint layer back up. And to lock it, like let's say, I'll lock it here. I think lock just means that I can't edit it. Even though I'm on the layer, I can't, oh no, I can't. Maybe it just means that I can't, oh, I can't move it. I just can't move it. It's like locked in place.
I see.
So if I guess if I unlock it, I right click, unlock, now I can move it back down. And the final thing about layers, so is called blend mode. It's another very cool Photoshop thing. Basically the pixels on top combine in different ways with the pixels behind. And there's a lot of different ways it can be combined or quote unquote blended. So for instance, the first one's none, obviously. Second one is multiply. If I click that, see how it kind of blends? It like multiplies the layers together. Or similarly, screen kind of does something different. Overlay does something different. Darken does something different. So this is another kind of big concept about Photoshop is the different blend modes and how they can kind of combine to make different light and different looks, right? So, you know, if I wanted to like add light, you know, if I wanted, for instance, like when would I use blend mode? Like maybe I turn this layer off and make a new layer real fast. Maybe I wanted to give this like a nice, like kind of sun tone. Maybe I'll zoom out a little bit. I'll make this brush a little bit bigger. And I'll just kind of paint this whole entire thing. And then if I right click, maybe I turn my transparency down a little bit. I go into blend mode and I hit overlay. See how it kind of, I still see the image behind it, but now it's like kind of a different weird color. Or maybe I want to hit multiply. Now it's even kind of a different color. So you get, it's kind of different feels, right? It's pretty similar to Instagram, frankly, but way more functionality. So I'm just going to keep, I'll just keep it like that for now. So now I'm going to get into drawing my site plan a little bit. And first thing I'm going to do, I'm going to crop my image. I don't know why it went away last time I cropped it. I'm going to crop it down to exactly where I want my site plan to be. So let's say, maybe I'll get a little bit of water in here. Water's cool. So here's my site plan. I'm going to hit apply up at the top, apply. Boom, there it is. So Photoshop is all about collaging, and I'm going to collage in order to make a site plan. You know, if we go back to these site plans that we were looking at, like what are some things people see? Like, can someone tell me something someone sees? How about this one? Someone jump in. Come on. Does anyone see something? Tell me what you see. No one? Can people even hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
All right, word. Okay, so Jorge, what do you see? Help me out. What's
I see some trees, some foliage. I see
nice?
Looks like a little kind of marina looking situation.
Word. I'll go with that. That's plenty. Thanks, Jorge. So let's add some trees. That's the first thing we're going to do. So like I said, it's all about collaging, right? It's all about collaging. So the trick to collaging is finding the right images to collage together. So, and I do that all on Google, all Google. So I'm going to hit a new tab button. I'm just going to type in tree, and let's say cutout. Remember from last time I said cutout is your friend, and I'm also going to say overhead. Tree cutout overhead. So I'm just searching on Google for cool images. Actually, this is a pretty cool one. I'm just gonna right click this image and hit copy image. Right click, copy image. I'm gonna go back to Pixlr. I'm just gonna Control V to paste. And maybe I can just right click and hit paste. No, it's not gonna let me. I got Control V. Boom. So there's my image. And as you can see on the left-hand side, it comes in as a new layer. It comes in as a new layer. And if I bring the layer below my kind of sepia, my brown tone layer, see it kind of turns brown, right? Because it's under the layer, right? Makes sense. So I'm going to put it under that layer, so it's kind of the same color as everything else. I'm going to make it a little bit smaller, right? Actually, I'm going to lock my sepia layer so I don't move it. I'm going to lock my background layer too. So I got this. I'm going to make it smaller and smaller. I'm going to zoom in. And then there's a couple things I got to do to this photo before it's ready for showtime, right? And namely, I got to erase some stuff in there. So I'm going to grab my eraser tool, and I'm going to maybe make it a little bit smaller. It's kind of big right now. I'm going to make the softness. I'm going to make it really sharp. So I'm going to turn down the softness. I'm just going to erase that. Now, the other thing I want to do is I want to erase all the white. Maybe I'll make it easier to see. I want to erase all the white. So the way I do that is the wand select. Remember how important this is? The wand select. Another thing I'm going to do, I'm going to make sure this sample all layers up at the top, I'm going to make sure it's off because I want to just sample the current layer. So if I click, you'll notice it selects all those white pixels. And I can just click and start removing those white pixels. Maybe I'll turn off contiguous because I want to select all the white pixels. Maybe I'll bump up that tolerance a little bit because I want to select all those white pixels at the edge. So boom, I select all these pixels and I get rid of them. I don't need them, I don't want them. I'm getting rid of them. And boom, so there's a tree. And you know, the next thing I want to do is start, you know, moving this tree around and make like a bunch of different trees. If you can't move something, it's usually because you have something else selected. So I got this tree. I can move it around. Now I'm just going to make it smaller. I'm going to zoom in. Maybe on my site plan, you know, one of my favorite things in a city is a tree. So I'm going to put trees along the street. So I got this layer here, and I'm just going to duplicate this layer. Right click and duplicate the layer. Where is it? There it is. And then move that. And I'm going to do that again and again. Still kind of learning the buttons of the program, sorry. Duplicate layer. It's a little slow. My internet connection is not very fast. I apologize. Y'all get the point. And then, you know, maybe I got this nice line of trees, and maybe I don't need like 3 layers. So maybe I'll grab all of these layers. And this little button here, merge down, is super helpful. It combines it with the layer that's directly below it. So I'm just going to click that button a few times so that now instead of having 3 trees on 3 different layers, I got 3 trees on 1 layer. Helpful little, and then I'll duplicate that, move that down here. Maybe I'll make 1 more duplicate layer. And this time, maybe I'll use this little rotate. I'll see how do I rotate. There we go. I just grabbed this little dot here and kind of rotate it around. And I'll put these trees over here. Boom. Now maybe I just want one more tree, but I grouped them all. So now so instead of copying 3, I'm going to use my little lasso tool. Remember the lasso tool? It's up here. I'm going to lasso around one of the trees. I'm going to hit Control C, Control V. Oops. I'll make sure I'm on the correct layer. And then lasso again. So maybe I'll merge these layers down. Merge all these trees so that all my trees are on the same layer. Maybe I'll even rename this layer. I'll call this layer trees. Maybe I'll grab my lasso tool, as I said before. Lasso tool, super useful tool. And I'll kind of lasso around this tree here. And I'll Control C, Control V to grab this tree. And I'll bring just one more tree. I'll rearrange my layers. It takes a little fiddling. Not exactly the same as Photoshop, it's very similar. And I'll rename this back to trees. All right, so now I just drew some trees on my site plan, which is cool. So now I'm not going to do too much more because I'm just showing you some tricks. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to add a little texture to these little outlines. So I think I said before that this outline, this kind of bigger outline, I was going to make into a little grassy area. So again, it's all about collaging. So I'm going to go back to the internet, back to Google image search, and I'm going to type in grass texture. The words texture and cutout are your friends when it comes to Google image search. So here's some grass textures. So these are nice. I'm going to do the same exact thing. I'm going to choose one I like. Maybe, I don't know. Maybe I'll just choose this first one. This one's kind of nice. Choose this. I'm going to copy, right click, hit copy image, go back to Pixlr. Just dump this guy in here. It's huge. It's freaking huge. I don't need it to be that big. Now, as you can tell, it's not the right shape, right? So there's a bunch of different ways that I can make it the right shape. I think the easiest way is to just select what I don't want and delete it. So I'm going to make it just a little bit transparent so I can kind of see through it temporarily. And then I'm going to grab my lasso tool and I'm going to single click, just click and hold, apologies. I'm going to like select different kind of pieces of it at a time. Delete. Whoops, I deleted the wrong layer. I'm going to do that again. I'm going to delete this. So notice that when I select something, if I'm not selecting the right layer, it's going to delete. It's going to delete from the layer only, right? It's not going to delete from all the layers. It's going to delete from the layer that I have selected. So to illustrate that, if I choose my layer 5, which is my brown tone, and I delete that, I delete the brown. And then, but if I go back to the image that I copy and pasted and delete that, then I'm deleting the correct layer. So that's kind of a reminder on how layers work. So there's some grass. And maybe, maybe I don't like my brown tone anymore. I actually don't like it. It looks a little poopy. But so yeah, there's my site plan. Very simple site plan. And obviously you can keep going. You can kind of keep going forever, right? You can put more textures and more buildings, and you can put people, or you can put cars or buses or parks or whatever. You can really go to your heart's desire. But this is I think a good stopping point, and then we kind of transition to something else. Does anyone have any questions? You guys are not very full of questions.
I got a question.
Yeah.
I got a question. So you're a working architect, right, Logan?
Yeah.
Easy question. Here's the other one. How often do you use these tools like this in your biz?
All the freaking time.
Right?
All the freaking time. Yeah, I mean, I have the other, at the bottom of the screen, you see this little blue icon. That's Photoshop. It's like the exact same program. And yeah, I use it all the freaking time.
And do you use it when you're building site plans, really?
Oh yeah, totally.
Okay, cool.
I mean, we use it, the reason why I kind of wanted to go from this program, the vector program where we draw lines and shapes and stuff, and we can move shapes around, to the photo program is because that's super similar to what we do in architecture, is we use like more complicated programs like AutoCAD to draw lines and stuff, and then we bring it into Photoshop in order to make it look sexy and draw trees and stuff, right? Yeah, so like, I mean, I might as well, this is
like real stuff.
Yeah, it's totally real. Oh my gosh, this is the job. Like, for instance, this is a program that I use for work, but it's just a black and white thing, and it doesn't look that convincing as an image, right? But so we bring an image like that into a program like this and make it look better.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Are we ever going to use AutoCAD?
We can learn AutoCAD if you want. It's not a great program.
All right.
But we can definitely, if you have an interest in learning that program, we can.
Yeah. All right.
So can I ask you what you would want to do in AutoCAD?
Probably just like, I guess, 3D modeling.
3D modeling? Like yeah, have you used SketchUp?
Yeah.
Yeah. Who's talking, by the way? Sorry to ask.
Dylan.
Oh, Dylan, what's up, man? Sorry, I couldn't tell if I recognized your voice or not. Everything's different via Zoom. So yeah, Dylan, we can definitely use AutoCAD. It's like a super complex program, right? And I think SketchUp's probably easier, frankly. So SketchUp at this point. You can go online, you can do SketchUp to your heart's desire. So yeah, I think, Dylan, if you want to learn AutoCAD, we can.
All right.
But I think for now, SketchUp's probably the way to go. And for the ID, I know the architecture classes learn SketchUp, and if the ID class wants to learn SketchUp, we can totally do that.
Mm-hmm.
And we can, Trish, I don't know if you want to talk about that with your students, or we can talk about it together or whatever, but that can totally happen. And like, just going back to this image real fast, like this is something you could do in SketchUp, right? It's a very simple 3D model. And you could do it in SketchUp, and then you could bring it back into a program like this and draw on top of it. Draw trees, draw people, draw the sky, draw the ground, et cetera, et cetera. So yeah. All right, so any other questions before we move on to a little bit of a different exercise? All right, Word. So before we move on, the one thing I wanted to mention that I did forget to mention is this thing on the lower right-hand side called History. Very awesome. It's just a running list of everything I've done. And it's helpful because if you do a bunch of stuff and you want to go way back in time, I can go way back in time just by clicking that button. And see, this is like way back in time, right? I like went in a time machine. And then I can go forward in time again and go back to where I was. And that's all history is. It's basically, it's a time machine. It's a time machine. So you can go forward and back. It's very, very useful. Very useful. All right, so the next thing I want to do, we did a plan drawing, right? So this is a plan drawing. Plan render, site plan, whatever you want to call it, plan. Next thing I want to do is more like I have here. I want to do what I call a collage render. And a render is basically just a way of saying a visualization of a design. And we're going to do a collage render because we're not learning Photoshop, or I'm sorry, we're not learning SketchUp today. We can do that later if we want. But we're going to do a render without a 3D model. And we're going to do it by just collaging things together. Okay? So buckle your seatbelts. I'm going to move fast again because I don't want you guys to get too bored. But if you have questions, please just slow me down. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new file up at the top right. So I'm just going to hit new image here. And I don't know what all these options are. It doesn't really matter. I'll just choose the default one, full HD. That sounds cool. And hit create over here on the right. So here I am. This is just a blank image. There's nothing there, just the background. So I'm going to go back to Google Maps. And I'm going to, you guys know how to use Google Street View. So I'm just going to get my little guy and go onto the street here. And here's the site, right? Here's the site in Google Street View. And I'm just going to take an image of this site. In fact, I already did take an image and I saved it. So I took an image of the site. And again, how I did that is I used my snipping tool, or if you're on a Mac, you go to Command-Shift-4. And if you're on a Windows, you use the little snipping tool. I use this tool literally every friggin' day, literally. So yeah, so anyway, I'm gonna take this image, I'm gonna take this, I'm gonna be drawing on top of it to get a design. And again, I'm gonna save it. I'm just gonna save this image. I already saved it here, I called it Oakland. So I'm gonna hit cancel because I already did this. I'm gonna go to my photo editing. And I'm going to add a new layer on the right-hand side. And this time I'm going to add an image layer. Let's see. I think I saved it on my desktop. Yeah, there it is, Oakland. Boom. Here it is. Beautiful. Let me make it a little bit bigger. The next thing I'm going to do is, and I did this on my own time. But I made a couple little sketches. And literally all I did was hold up a piece of paper to my computer screen and kind of sketched my idea on top of it. That's literally all I did. I just held up a piece of paper to the computer screen. I wanted to show you, this is kind of the first thing I drew, which is kind of sort of the outline. I mean, it's kind of rotated, it's hard to tell. Let's rotate it the correct way. It's a very basic outline of what's going on there. And then the second thing I drew, so that's it, that's another image. Second thing I drew is this guy. So this is, it's hard to see, but it's kind of a design that I'm gonna put into Pixlr. And this is obviously, it's just a piece of paper and a pen. And this took me like 5 minutes, right? This is kind of my idea. This is my design. I'm thinking maybe we got some shipping containers on the left for homes. I'm thinking we got some shipping containers on the right for homes. I'm thinking we got maybe a structure right on the right in your face here, and then maybe we have like a little road in the middle, and then maybe a canopy on top. So that's what we're drawing. Okay, this is a super basic sketch. So I just took a picture of that with my phone. That's all it is. It's just my freaking phone. Whoops, not that one. Let's see here. There it is. It's just my phone. So you can do this on your own time. It requires no special tools. So I'm going to take this. I'm pretty sure all I can do, I can just drag and drop this. Yeah, there we go. Boom. And I don't know. I'm just going to apply. So there it is. Oh, no. Actually, let's do that. Let's do that again. I think what I need to do is hit add new layer. So I'm going to add a new layer. So add a layer. Same thing. Add an image. Let's see where it is on my desktop. No, it's in my downloads. Here it is. It's this one here. I'm going to add it on top. So there it is. And I'm going to bump down the transparency a bunch, right? So now you start to see what the idea was. And this isn't quite the right size. I'm going to make it the right size and make it a little bit smaller. Over here in the top right, you see how I kind of gave myself a guide. I kind of hinted what I was drawing because that building in the background. So I kind of gave myself a little guide. And then also the other guide I gave myself was the sidewalk. See how I kind of drew a line for the sidewalk? Those were the two guides. I just gave myself a couple little guides on where exactly this sketch goes. So I'm just going to layer this sketch directly on top because this is my idea, right? So there it is. So we have the beginnings of my render. Very simple, very simple. So my sketch, I'm going to bump up my sketch a little bit more. My sketch, it's just, like I said, it's just a very simple idea, but I'm going to use it as kind of an outline of what I want to collage together. And the first thing I'm going to do to my sketch is I'm going to erase the white because I really don't want the white anymore. I just want my pen. So I'm going to use my favorite tool, the wand tool, right? The magic wand select. Again, I'm just going to select all these pixels. Boom, you see it selects all of them. Boom, I just erased them, right? So I just erased all those pixels. So now all I'm left with is the pen, right? It's kind of hard to see, but all I'm left with is the pen. Another way I can do that, just to back up, go back in time for a second. Go back in time, use my history to go back in time a little bit, is I can choose a different blending mode. Remember blending mode. I can choose a different blending mode of my layer. And multiply is a pretty good one for this because it turns white pixels more or less transparent. Also do like overlay. Overlay is a pretty good one actually. So maybe I'll just do that for now. And in the end, I'm probably going to erase my sketch because I'm just using it as a guide. So now I can kind of see the pens in the background. It's kind of layered on top. So the first thing I'm going to do is draw my shipping container homes. So let's do that. I'm going to again go to Google Images. Let's type in shipping container. These are pretty good. I'm actually, you know what I want? I don't want like a full, I don't think I want like a full shipping container. I really just want the side of it. So actually this image right here is perfect. I'm just going to right click again. I'm just going to hit copy. Oops. Come back in here, Control V, paste, Control V. Again, I'm going to do the same thing that I did with the trees in the last one. I'm going to select the white pixels that I don't want. I'm going to delete them. Deselect with Control D. I get my eraser tool. I'm going to erase this, make my eraser tool a little bit bigger. Erase that. Now I got this kind of shipping container texture. And I know that I kind of want it to go like over here. I got my little outline. I'm going to hold down Shift in order to make it kind of the right size. And you notice that it's not quite the right, it's not in perspective. It's just a flat image. So in order to adjust that, remember how I told you in the beginning is this transform tool in Edit. And this is what we're going to use. We're going to do what's called free distort. This allows me to distort it slightly. So see how I can kind of like pull it into perspective mode? I'm distorting the image. So again, just hit escape real fast and do that again. And go up to edit, go to free distort, and just distort it. Remember, let me know if you got questions. I'm just going to keep rolling through this. So there's one. There's kind of my shipping container, and maybe my next thing I'm going to do. I'm going to put some plants in here because I like plants. This would look nice. So maybe let's say I go to let's say plants cutout. Remember, cutout. The word cutout is your friend. Plants cutout, and I'm just gonna. This one actually looks pretty good. I'm going to choose this one, and the same thing. It's all about collaging. I'm just going to right click. Copy image. Hit this, same thing. I'm doing the same thing over and over again. Wand select the white pixels because I don't want the white pixels. Delete the white pixels. Then bring this over here and just make a little. So I'm just gonna start collaging this stuff on top of one another. So now I got some plants there. Maybe I'll duplicate that layer. Maybe I'll make some more plants. Make this one a little smaller. Duplicate that layer. Yeah, I got a lot of layers going on now. That's okay. I'll merge my plant layers together. So it's easy to lose track of your layers. So it's always good to try your hardest to be organized. The next thing I'm going to do, I'm going to put a little face on these shipping containers. Right now, I just got the side. I'm going to put a face. And again, this is all about collaging. So the better you are at searching for images on Google, the better you are going to be collaging. I'm going to say, I'm literally just going to say cool shipping container. Cool shipping, whoops, cool shipping container. And, you know, you can choose whatever you want. I actually think this is kind of cool. I'm going to steal this design. I'm going to use this image. And I'll wait for it to load, and then I'll show you what I mean by that. So again, I'm just going to hit right click, copy image, same thing that I've been doing. Control V to paste it in. Boom. So I'm going to take this image and I'm going to steal it from them. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to flip it so it's going the right direction. And this is similar to the program we learned Tuesday where I just flip something. And let's try and find it. If you go into Edit, Transform, Flip Horizontal. Boom. I just flipped that. I'm going to make it a little bit smaller. And again, like I said, Photoshop is all about selecting and deleting. Selecting and deleting. So I'm going to use my Lasso Tool. And I'm going to kind of just cut out what I don't want. I don't need to be super precise. I'm just going to cut out what I don't want. I kind of like that door. That door's kind of cool. So I'm just going to grab this. And, you know, I grabbed what I do want, but I actually want to grab what I don't want, if that makes sense. So in order to do that, I kind of invert selection. Over here and stuff like that. I kind of did that a little fast. But if you select something and then you want the opposite of what you selected, you do invert selection. And just to do that another way, not to confuse people, but the typical way that we've been doing it is selecting what we want to delete and then deleting it like this. Selected that and I delete that. And maybe my next step is to select this down here. And delete that. And maybe my next step is to select this stuff here and delete that. Select this little last bit here. All right, so there we go. Control D to deselect. Now I got this kind of thing that's kind of sort of to this perspective I want it, and I'm gonna kind of sort of just kind of sort of put it in there. I'm going to move it behind my plants layer, right? Because I want my plants in the foreground. And, you know, it's not, I got to say, it's not like perfect. Like the perspective isn't perfect, but it's good enough, right? It's good enough. So I'm actually going to use my Distort Tool and kind of push it in a little bit. And actually kind of pull it up and pull it down. You know, it's an idea, right? It's just an idea. Maybe one thing I'll do, it's always helpful to kind of give an outline. So maybe I'll grab my brush tool and make a new layer. I'm just going to make a new layer. See, I got lots of layers going on, so it's getting a little confusing. I'm going to make an empty layer, and I'm going to just call this layer lines. Because it's actually really helpful to draw lines on top. I'm just going to use my brush tool. Remember my brush tool, big tool, and I'm going to select black. Hit OK. I'm going to kind of zoom in, and I'm going to just give myself, whoopsies, that's way too big. Bring my size way down. Bring my size down even more, my softness down a little bit. So one thing with the brush tool, if you want to draw a straight line, you click once, hold down Shift and click again. I just drew a straight line. Once again, I click once, I hold down Shift and click again, and I draw a straight line. So that's pretty useful because sometimes I want straight lines. Now I see that this thing isn't quite right. I want to erase a little bit more. So I think it's this layer here. Yeah, it's this layer here. Oh, I'm going to grab my eraser tool. And I'm just going to erase a little bit. I'm going to bring my size down. Cool. So now maybe I think I'm just going to do two more things. And obviously, you know, I could spend all day on this, and sometimes I do for work, right? Because sometimes it's easier just to draw a collage as opposed to 3D modeling, drawing all the lines, except like sometimes an idea is just a collage of other ideas, right? So I could spend all day on this, but I'm just going to do two more things. Well, first thing I'm going to do is kind of draw kind of a cool like grass, maybe some kind of, or maybe have like a cool pavement, like a main street down the middle. And then I'm going to collage in a canopy thing, maybe a nice wood canopy. So let's do the pavement first. So again, I'm going to go to Google, and I'm going to type in what's a cool word for like a alley? I'm just going to say like alley pavement, like pavement in an alley or something. Some of these are cool. How about, let's say, any of these are cool, really. And sometimes I like using the word texture. Texture is a really good word to use because texture, you get a bunch of images like this that are simplified. So I don't have to cut as much stuff out. Texture is a great word. Actually, this is a pretty nice, this is actually kind of nice. I don't know, maybe, actually this, how about this one? A cool like brick. Maybe I'll say like brick pavement texture. All about finding cool images. So I'll just choose one flat to show you that we can distort it into any shape we really want. So again, I'm just going to right click, copy image, go over to Pixlr, Control V to paste. Now I'm going to kind of sort of get this to the size I want. Maybe I'm going to rotate it a little bit. Right, kind of sort of rotate it, kind of sort of get it to, whoops. Kind of sort of get it to the size I want. If I hold down Shift, I can make it like weird things like that. Okay, hold down Shift. And I'm going to kind of sort of get it right, and then the rest of it, I'm going to use the Distort tool. I'm going to kind of sort of get it right. And then remember the Distort tool that I did to the shipping container? I'm going to go over here to Free Distort. And I'm going to kind of push it into place. See what I did there? Now we've got this kind of cool brick pattern. It's kind of cool. Boom. And I kind of just distorted it into place. Anyone have questions about that? I'm going to tone down the transparency because it's kind of intense right now. Just tone it down a little bit. Now I'm going to put my plants layer on top of it, right? Makes sense. All right, last thing I'm going to do, I'm going to put a canopy overhead. So let's say, so again, it's all about, take a sip of water, sorry. It's all about finding cool images on Google. Architecture is all about stealing ideas. So let's say canopy, wood canopy. I was only half kidding about stealing ideas. Only half kidding. So let's say, this one will be a little bit tougher, right? Because we got more, we're going to have more work to do, but I actually think this one's kind of cool. And it looks like a challenge, so let's do it. I'm going to, again, same thing as always, copy image, go to Pixlr, paste, boom, and kind of sort of get it to the right size. I'm going to tone down the transparency a little bit so I can see what I'm doing. This is kind of cool, actually. So for this one, I think I'm just going to like freehand erase, basically. So I'm just going to take my eraser tool over here. I'm just going to start erasing. This is totally freehand, right? I'm going to bump up my eraser size a little bit. I'm going to bump it up. I'm just going to go for it. I kind of erase what I don't want. Erase some more. Erase, 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 erase. So I kind of sort of erase. Same thing, if I hold down Shift, I can erase in a straight line. Super useful. Hold down Shift, erase in a straight line. So that looks pretty good. Now I'm going to erase those blue sky pixels that I don't want. So I'm going to use my wand tool. I'm just going to select. And I select it because I don't have contiguous turned on. I'm selecting all of them. If I zoom in, you'll notice they're not touching, which is what I want. So I'll delete all those. I'm going to delete these ones up here too. There's a few more in there that I got to get. Delete those. Delete some more of those. Now I got some more detailed work to do, so I'm going to bump up my transparency a little bit so I can see better. I'm still using my wand tool, but I'm going to bump down the tolerance a little bit, and I'm just going to kind of get in there and erase. I turn contiguous on so I can be a little bit more careful. And I think I've done everything I can do with the wand tool, so I'll switch to my lasso tool. I come up here, get rid of this kind of chunk here. Get rid of this chunk. Oops, maybe I got rid of too much there. Get rid of this chunk here. Get rid of this weird chunk on top. Get rid of this kind of blue weird chunk here. I'm just kind of selectively deleting, right? And there it is. I mean, that's kind of the idea, right? Like kind of a wood canopy. I think it looks a little big right now, so maybe I'll just make it a little smaller. So boom, that's my wood canopy. And obviously I haven't done anything on the right-hand side of the picture, but that could be a very cool like community kitchen or something, right? Or it could be, you know, something else. Actually, I'm going to do two more things. I'm going to give it, I think we can do two more things. I'm going to give it some action in the background because it's kind of sad back there. And in order to do that, I'm just going to take my plant layer, and I'm going to duplicate my plant layer. And I'm going to move it over. I'm going to make it smaller. Whoops. I'm going to rename my canopy layer to canopy. I'm going to lock it. So my plants layer here, my plants copy, I'm going to move that down behind some stuff. So it's kind of in the back. See how I did that? Just kind of moving it down to the back. Now I kind of have like a nice back. You know, it doesn't look like a dirt mound. It looks like kind of a planted back. And then the last thing I'm going to do, I'm going to add a couple people. So again, the word cutout is your friend. I'm going to say people cutout. And I don't know, I can add any of these people. It doesn't really matter which one I add, but I'll just show you the concept. Let's see, to Trisha's point, I wonder if I can add a family. Family cutout. Oh, that's a happy family. Let's use one of these happy families. So I'll take this one, same thing as always, copy image, go back to Pixlr, paste, and I'm gonna magic wands those white pixels out of there. And notice how there's a shadow. I actually kind of want to keep their shadow. That shadow is actually kind of useful. So I'm gonna delete the white pixels, I'm gonna turn off contiguous, and delete the white pixels. So I'm gonna bump up my tolerance a little bit. Delete my white pick, kind of erased a little bit of the people, but that's okay. And actually, I erased a little too much there, so maybe I'll back up a little bit. Kind of, oh, yeah. Unfortunately, that woman's shoulder is white, and so is this kid's shirt, but whatever, it doesn't need to be perfect, right? So I'm just going to delete it. And move this, and so get some people in there. And I think their shadows are useful because, for instance, if I use my wand tool, turn on contiguous, and I select their shadows here, I'm just going to kind of select their shadows here down on the ground with my wand tool, my favorite tool. Then I'm going to use my brush tool. I got black selected down here. I'm going to turn the opacity of my brush tool down a little bit at the top. And I'm just going to, let's see here, I'm not working. Not sure why that's not working. Oh, I chose the wrong brush. This one, this is the one I want. Turn my opacity down a little bit. I'm just gonna kind of brush over their shadows so it looks like they got some black shadows. So, you know, I could have spent more time doing that, but I think it's good for now. So we're all done. We're done for today. But I just want to show you, you know, and there's some cleanup to do, right? There's a little bit of cleanup to do, but that's okay. Like, for instance, maybe I can turn my sketch layer off and it looks a little better, right? And there's some other things we can do. We can clean up the people. We can add more trees. We can add all sorts of stuff. But just to remind us what we started with only an hour ago, right, was this. This is what we started with. And it's always cool, in my opinion, to see a before and after. So, you know, the before is this, and the after is this. Before, after. So, you know, it's not beautiful, but it's an idea, and you could spend a lot longer on it and make it beautiful. So that's that. That is architectural collage rendering freaking in high speed. Do people have questions? People
I don't
think
have
this
a
is
question.
cool? Yeah, go for it.
I thought that was super cool. And as someone who has watched hours of Photoshop and Illustrator tutorials, I thought you did a really good job. I appreciated that.
Thanks, man.
That was tight.
Yeah, you know, there's a billion Photoshop tutorials out there, and this program's super similar, and I guarantee you there's a billion Pixlr tutorials out there as well. In fact, I know there is. I was looking at them earlier. And you can just, like, this is, like, you can do whatever you want. Like, you can Photoshop, like, if you wanted to Photoshop a skate park, you could Photoshop a skate park, right? You know what I'm saying? Like, you could Photoshop whatever you want. And I think in the coming weeks, in the next couple of weeks, we'll start to ask you, like, what do you think would make for great temporary housing? Like, what is your opinion on that matter? And using these different tools, you know, whether it's a collage render like this or like a site plan render like this, you know, it'll be up to y'all to tell us what you think should go here or whatever. We'll talk about site at a later time. But you know, this is an example of one site in Oakland that over the course of 2 hours we made better. So
Very cool.
no one's got any questions? All right, then I guess we're free to go. I'm Trish, Chris, you guys have anything you want to say? I think maybe they signed off.
Just that those of you that are, you know, still with this is good stuff to geek out on. You guys got time. Play with this thing. This is powerful. And, you know, if you haven't used it, it makes rendering a lot easier than drawing renderings, that's for sure.
Yeah.
This is the new age. Back in the day, this was a lot of drafting time.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah.
I mean, think of that. That's been gone for a long time, but these are tools that are yours, and you know, you can just geek out on this stuff on your own time and play with stuff, you know, re-landscape your yard, put on an addition, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
So
yeah, totally. I mean, you can go outside, you can take a picture of your house or your apartment or your school or whatever, and then you can just Photoshop a skate park on top of it, right?
yeah, exactly. I mean,
yeah,
you can have fun with this stuff. You can put in the tree that you want. You can put what a live Christmas tree would look like in your yard in 5 years.
Yeah.
That sort of thing. So.
Yeah, so it's super powerful.
Yep. Great.
Well, thanks, man. Thanks, Chris. And thanks everyone for joining. We recorded, and so Chantel or Jorge will share this link to this recording as well as a link to the recording on Tuesday as well. And yeah, I guess that's it.
Awesome. Thank you, Logan.
Thanks, Chris. And yeah, thanks a lot, Jorge, and thanks everyone for joining. So we'll see you all next week.
All right. See you.
See you guys.
See ya.
Thanks, Logan.
Yeah, you bet.
Thank you.
Thank you.